So it's good to see that Nokia is still doing that update page, because I did worry that it would kind of die a death.
Hello, Ian.
Hello there, Ed. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
It's good. Always good to hear you.
How do I sound?
Very clear.
Good. I've got the big old Yeti microphone here.
You haven't got your Beats. You haven't got your Beats audio headphones then.
Clip. Clip.
I'm just starting the recorder off. Seems all okay.
What shall we be talking about today before we start anything?
I thought what would be good to talk about is your post about Android. We were talking about Android and Microsoft's take on Android and what that could potentially mean for the future the other week, and Jason mentioned your article, so I thought it would be good to sort of to start on that and sort of focus on that.
Okay, which
the article
I should go. I should go look at it again.
Always a good idea.
Yeah.
Just so I can remember.
Yeah.
Is that Jason?
Jason.
Yeah.
Hi, Jason.
Hi.
Hey, nice to talk to you again.
Yes, and to you. Yeah, it's been a while. So. Yeah. But no, I thought it was excellent. And obviously, I think it's quite it's a good time to get you on, because obviously Microsoft's announcing yesterday that kind of admitting that they're only the 14%, as opposed to the original, well, what they were 90% on the old desktop market. I think it puts your article in a good light.
I agree.
And you've got Gary here as well, Ed.
Hey, Gary.
Hi. I keep missing the shows you're on, which is not deliberate.
I know.
Things are running slow. There must be some updates or something running, because it's all going slow. Everything, the PCs are running slow, but I know it's not the bandwidth anymore because I've got no.
Oh, thank you, Ian. Just a bit in.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Right. I can send that out.
I'm more than happy with my 3 megabit connection. Thanks very much.
I can't handle anything under 30 nowadays.
Oh.
Yeah, one of our regular gripes was that my bandwidth was always at sort of 1.5 meg, but I just got 40 meg, so I can now. I can't remember the time when I managed with less than 30. So.
I wish I had those options.
Yeah, we just got it, so it's. I've been moaning for a long time, believe it. every week, basically.
And I say you're not hardcore unless you spend 5 days downloading the Internet Explorer 3 beta. Then you're just not a hardcore internet user.
Whoa!
Downloading that over
on that 9600K modem.
Yeah.
Oh no! Wait, I got 14.4K.
That much.
All right.
Okay. I think everything's running now. So, Gary and Jason, good evening.
Good evening.
And we have got a special guest. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Ed Bott.
Hello, Ian. It's good to be back.
It's always a pleasure to get you on the show. Been on the show many times. Well, dating back to in single figures, I think you were on the show. Single figure numbers when we were doing the show first with you.
And then we started doing round numbers.
That's right. We broke the round number. We're on 458.
Yeah. So what are we up to now?
Yeah, 458. 458.
458.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure it's a meaningful and significant number. Somebody will come out and explain to us why that number is cosmically relevant.
Yes. It's probably something to do with 42 somewhere along the line.
Exactly.
It's the number of users still running Windows XP.
No, that's far too small.
Yeah, or number of Windows Phone 8.1 users, maybe.
That's possible. We've got the latest firmware update.
Yeah. Number of people running the Cyan update for Windows Phone. Hopefully,
yeah, that might be closer to the truth.
Yeah.
In testing.
Now, the reason why we reached out and contacted you is because for the last couple of weeks we were talking about a couple of stories that related to with the Nokia X phone and Microsoft essentially having their own brand of Android phone and what that meant for Microsoft. And then you did a great article about Microsoft's relationship with Android and looking at sort of the announcement of this week. There's been talk from Microsoft, and there was a big sort of email to the company that Satya Nadella posted, which talked about their platform and their strategy. So I thought all this would kind of fit together. So it would be good to get you back on the show to talk about that. So I don't know, guys, where do we want to start? Android and Microsoft. First, Ed, what was the topic? Give us the title of your article, because I think that sets it off quite nicely.
It was entitled "Microsoft's Relationship with Android. It's Complicated."
So,
and it's and then the summary text for the article is the more I watch the evolution of technology, the more similarities I see between today's Google and the ruthless Microsoft of the early 1990s. Can old age and treachery vanquish youth and skill?
Very appropriate, I think. Yes.
So, up until a few months ago, Microsoft and Android were just two things that didn't go together. Then recently, we've started seeing a different approach with their apps, where they're now available on multiple platforms. And then, of course, they've got the Nokia X phones. So, maybe we should start with the Nokia X phones. What do you think? What do you think of Microsoft then? How important was Nokia X and the Android phones to Microsoft when they made the purchase of Nokia?
I don't know the answer to that one. I suspect it was fairly low. I think most of the move to incorporate a sort of private label version of Android into Nokia devices is something that was driven by the Nokia engineers and management when they were independent, and Microsoft kind of inherited that. In fact, the Nokia X was announced, I think, at Mobile World Congress this year, wasn't it? Back in February, before.
That would be about right, yeah.
Yeah, before the transaction that Microsoft purchasing the Nokia Devices division had closed, and as is the case in all of those transactions, there's always a possibility, a risk. But certainly a possibility that the transaction will fall apart at the end. In fact, it almost happened this time around because of some legal concerns that the government of India had over some of Nokia's manufacturing facilities, and they managed to work through those in time to get the deal closed. But the point is that Microsoft and Nokia were legally not permitted to coordinate their activities in advance of the merger closing. There could be friendly conversations up to a certain line, but they couldn't coordinate their activities. So Microsoft kind of inherited the Android hardware when it took possession of the Nokia Devices division at the end of April.
Do you think if Satya hadn't come along, whether we'd still actually have that as part of the portfolio, and whether they'd actually be launching Android X2 if Steve was still in charge?
We can speculate on what would and wouldn't have happened. I think I suspect that it probably would have, because I think the momentum to say, we need to have our flagship software applications and our flagship online services available on every single platform started last year. That's how they were able to ship Office for iPad this year, early this year when they did. A very, very successful launch. And that decision to launch that product, to develop that product, and then launch it, was made under the Steve Ballmer administration. Now, I think it was also delayed for quite a while under the Ballmer administration, but I think it was in the last year or so that he finally stopped the delaying tactics and agreed to do that. And the Android decision flows from that one. If your goal is to be a ubiquitous provider of services to the entire world, you can't ignore the most common mobile phone platform, and that's Android. And the fact that platform is now growing to include a great many tablets makes it even more important. You don't want, if you want to say that Office and Azure and Outlook.com and OneDrive and all of those things go together and will work for you anywhere, not having them on Android leaves this big gigantic hole and makes the story incomplete.
But the thing that seems interesting that's changed is a few years ago, if you were in the Microsoft ecosystem, you needed all your Microsoft devices and everything else. And then when I started using other platforms, say I stopped using SkyDrive as it was then, or in Live Mesh, and went to Dropbox because I could use it on anything then. What's been the reason that Microsoft have sort of changed, and now they seem to be the one provider that's everywhere?
Yeah, it's funny how these things go around and then come back around, isn't it? The dream is always for technology companies to have Apple's combination of owning the hardware stores, owning the software stores, and owning the operating system. And at that point, once they've reached enough critical mass, which they certainly have with iOS, then everybody has to be there. That's why you have Gmail apps and Google Search apps and Google Maps apps on the iPhone and iPad platforms, because Google cannot afford to ignore them. But now Google is trying to play things the other way. A lot of their services are on Android, and they're on iOS because they can't afford not to be. But they have not developed anything substantial for either Windows Phone or for the Windows 8 app platform.
Sounds like your dog's enjoying it.
Yeah, there's a dog in the background with a squeaky toy.
Sounds like enjoying the show.
He's testing the Nokia X3, I think.
Yeah. But probably a Bluetooth attached squeaky toy. So Google wants to lock Microsoft out, and I think Microsoft has finally said, look, our roots have always been support any important platform. I mean, I think what's interesting is if you go back, apps like Excel existed on the Mac first.
Yeah.
And didn't come to Windows until later. Office was the sort of crown jewel in the Microsoft-Apple relationship back in 1997 or 98 when Steve Jobs returned, and Microsoft made a substantial investment of cash in Apple, and then on top, the cash was important, but the thing that was even more important was they said, we are going to continue to develop Office for the Mac for at least the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever. There's some big number there that legitimized the platform and made it so that people could say any investment that I make in the Mac will be I know that the productivity software, the most important piece of productivity software that I have, will continue to be available for it, and that was Microsoft Office. And so, the sort of rise of Android was something that I think, if you look at the curve, the growth curve, it's been very steep and very sudden, and even had Microsoft's executive suite jumped on the need to participate in that platform early, they still would have taken some time to do it, just because the platform was growing and changing so quickly. So I think, but somebody at some point last year said, no, these services that we're selling are really important, and we don't want to be in the situation where somebody will say, well, I'm going to go use Dropbox, or I'm going to go use some other Office-type solution, Google Docs, whatever, because Office isn't available on my Android tablet, and unless I have it everywhere, the value proposition isn't there for me. So I think that's when they said we have to do, we've got to be a major player here.
Because I kind of cast my mind back, and I think it was one of the times we had you on the show, Ed, where I, kind of raised the question of, Microsoft's a dominant player. I think it might have been on TDR Mobile. Microsoft's such a dominant player. What can, what could possibly, turn that around in the future? I can't see Microsoft not being the dominant player. But then something like, the mobile revolution, with the iPad, with the iPhone, then the iPad, and then subsequently Android. That's kind of been the massive shift that's put Microsoft on the back foot.
Right. There's two things that happened there. One is that the technology changed around us so that a lot of the things that we used to use a computer for can now be accomplished from just about any device. You can stay connected with email or messaging software of some sort, messaging services. Just take your pick of a messaging service from a smartphone, a small tablet, a large tablet, a portable PC, a desktop PC, any of those things. And it used to be that if you wanted to do those things, you really needed to have, at some point you needed to go and open up your PC, open up your portable PC, or go sit down in front of your desktop PC to do that. And so what we've had is this big shift where a lot of the things we do can be done on any device. And that didn't reduce the importance of the PC as a business tool, but what it did was reduce the amount of time that it gets used in comparison to other people's technologies. The second thing, though, that's really important in there that most people don't think about is that for the first, 6 or 7 years of the last decade, while the linchpins of the mobile revolution were being set in place, the things that led up to iPhone being introduced in 2007 and an Android happening a year or two after that, and iPad happening in 2010. While all of that groundwork was being laid, Microsoft was under a whole bunch of antitrust restrictions that prevented it from doing the kind of integration of their profitable services into their sort of futuristic products that their competition was allowed to do, because they weren't convicted monopolists. and so as a result, Microsoft stayed really, really, really focused on the PC and enterprise stuff, and a lot of its services, a lot of its mobile things couldn't be done as effectively as they might have been able to do them for legal reasons. Now, on top of that, there were a bunch of mistakes and a bunch of, wrong turns that they made, and things that just happened too late. I mean, you could rattle off a list of them. The Zune was a great product that should never have been introduced, because by the time it came around, its ability to compete with the iPod was non-existent. That battle had already been lost, and they were struggling for tiny percentage points and jokes on late night TV. Microsoft getting into online advertising in 2006 or 2007 when they bought aQuantive, that was a big distracting move that turned out to be a terrible wrong turn that sucked up resources that could have been devoted to being ready for the mobile revolution. So a lot of mistakes that were made along the way that sort of got the company, like you say, on their back foot almost continuously up until the present day in a lot of fields.
Because I often think that in a way Windows being successful in the consumer space was kind of one, an accident, and two, just a complete lack of competition. Because when you look at, I don't know, there's been a massive shift in modern computing, but when you look at the devices people use today, it's hard to imagine that people would have chosen to have such a complex device where they have to go around looking for graphics driver updates and printer updates and
right.
plug in a device, and a device that complicated only really I think came into the home because people were familiar with it from work. But really it was just the whole device was just far too complex really for a consumer oriented device.
Absolutely right. I couldn't agree more with that one. There's a level of management that goes into a PC even today, although it's become better. There's still, they're very complicated machines and powerful machines, and I've made the comment before that PCs are like snowflakes. No two PCs are alike.
Yes.
And if you look at the components that are in the, first of all, you look at how many 500 or more, probably 548 separate OEMs that are that are building things that can be called PCs, and then they're using all kinds of different chipsets and components in them from different manufacturers. And then on top of that, there's different versions of Windows and different utilities and different applications and different driver levels and such. And so by the time I encounter this when I hear from PC users all the time, or they say, how come Microsoft isn't fixing this particular problem that I'm having? It seems to be, it seems to be really common. I go, no, it's, actually the problem that you're having is not common. The fact that you can find hundreds of examples of it in an online forum is a tribute to the law of large numbers. When there's 1.5 billion PCs out there, something that affects 1/1000th of 1% of the installed base of PCs is going to be very difficult to find, and yet it's going to be very painful for the people who are having to deal with it. And those are things that really sort of demand an IT department, and rather than a consumer to work on them. And so the only reason that historically PCs wound up in the home was because they were sort of by default the only device that you could use for many communication tasks. If you wanted to get on the internet prior to 2010, you needed a PC or a Mac, really. The PC, if you were very brave, you could buy a PC with Windows on it and then replace it with some distro of Linux. but very, very, very few people did that. By and large, all of the growth of the internet happened because of web browsers running on PCs, and then that all really fundamentally changed in 2010 with the release of the iPad, which was a simple device that, although it still requires some care and feeding, but it doesn't require anywhere near the management that a PC does.
Yeah, I mean, even from my perspective as a technical enthusiast that likes messing around with things, like PCs and building my own PCs, I've gone from having a Windows home server in the house, a desktop PC, and kind of transitioned. Our home server hasn't been on since Christmas. Our data that used to be centrally organized on that is now shifted either into the cloud or on our remaining desktop PC. But while that desktop PC still exists in the house, it probably gets used maybe once or twice a week. The kids prefer their iPods. My wife's got a Surface Pro 2, which admittedly is a type of PC, but she doesn't use it in the old way of storing lots of things on it. It's really just essentially the only reason why I didn't get her the Surface 2 was because at that time we were still using Media Center, so that was the best option. But nowadays she could quite easily get by with a Surface 2 device or a Lumia tablet. It's just amazing, in a technically orientated household, how we've even shifted away from that desktop PC setup.
Yes, indeed. I was looking at that this morning, in fact, as I was looking at my music collection, which used to be the primary place for it used to be on a Windows home server. And now it's on the same hardware that used to be running Windows home server is simply running Windows 8, logged into a separate user account, and all of the music and pictures and videos and everything are in a OneDrive store there that's synchronized to that machine. So from inside my home, from any device running any operating system, I can connect to that network computer and pull down music if I want to, or I can connect to the cloud and pull down music if I want to. And then just recently, I've actually taken that entire collection and moved the whole thing up to Amazon's Music Cloud, which has the advantage. It's very Apple-like in a way because it does a match. So if you point it at so I pointed at my central storage of music and say match this, and so it matched about 50% of the collection, which for most people the number would probably be closer to 90%. But I have a lot of live recordings and old things that aren't available, that are no longer available for purchase. A lot of collectors type material. And so in that case, I was able to. So it matched everything that I had and said, okay, this is here in Amazon's cloud. And then it allowed me to upload. I think for $25 a year, it will allow me to upload up to 250,000 songs, which, that's a lot of songs. That would put you in the top 0.1% of music collectors, I think, if you had that many songs. And so I did. It took about 3 days, but I uploaded the whole thing there. So I now have sort of two mirrors of my music collection that are, one's on Amazon, one's on OneDrive, and I can get to them from any device. And the Amazon service is actually more appropriate because I use a Kindle Fire tablet, and so it can just connect to the Amazon Music Cloud and play me anything that I have. And download it to to that device that I have. But now here's another company, Amazon, that has not written any of its apps. The only app that it's written for Windows 8 is a Kindle app, and that Kindle app is pretty Limited.
We've mentioned that before.
Yeah, that's something we regularly talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and so you get to the point. So you say, well, okay, in this case, I'm going to prefer the Amazon devices because I have a big investment in the Amazon cloud, and I'm going to shift over to their services for something. And there once again is a situation where I'm making hardware decisions based on the availability of services, and because the Xbox Music service on Android isn't as powerful as the Amazon Music service on Android, that's, you know, there's something that I have to take into account there.
Because I've been trying the Xbox Music service. I took out a year's subscription because I thought that way I'm kind of bought into a year and I can stick with it and see how the service evolves. And two of the main issues that I've really run into is, first of all, it's really difficult to share that because on Windows 8 devices, the Xbox Music is tied to the account you're logged in on. Now that's changed slightly with Windows Phone. Now that they've removed the app out of their core operating system, you can sign in with a separate account. So that's been one limitation, which is why, again, same as you, Ed, I've been looking at Amazon Music. The other thing was we talked about the other week is some of my music which had been matched to the Xbox Music Cloud, which I synchronized down to my Lumia 2520. I went to play it at work the other day, and it said this music has been removed at the license owner's request. So music that is actually my own music, I couldn't play because it's no longer available on Xbox Music.
Right, and so there's, you know, and music is one of the most frustrating families of services that you could possibly look at today, and right now nobody has it going well. You could get that same message from Spotify, or from Apple Radio, or from, you know, Google's Play Store, or Amazon's Music Store. I've seen that message from all of those services as I've tested things along the way, precisely because the label holders get the right to add and remove their content anytime they want to. And that's one thing I think that appealed to me about the Amazon service, is that, you know, if it's not there, I can upload it myself. I don't have to worry about it being available in the store. Once it's matched, once it's either matched or uploaded, it just exists. It just exists there. And even if the label holder, the day after I match that, even if they say this is no longer allowed, it doesn't get pulled from that service because it's actually being stored there as files in my name on the AWS cloud. And so that's, you know, I think that to me is really, really important. I mean, imagine if the same thing were to happen to, you know, to documents that you have, where, you know, you save some document to a cloud storage file, and then you say, you know, somewhere along the line, you know, you say, you go to open this document and it says, oh, sorry, this document is no longer available for you. Now that can happen on the business side. That can and should happen if you have let's say a PowerPoint presentation that contains confidential confidential information from your company, and it's been protected with rights management, and then you leave the company, or you're a contractor and your contract ends, and somebody at the other end of you know, at the server for the company where you've just ended your relationship, flips a switch there and says, right, Ed is no longer authorized to have access to these documents, and so if I go to open those, you know, that document is flagged, and it says, before you can open this, you have to go out to this server and check and make sure that Ed's okay for this. It checks, it says, no, he's not okay. It says, sorry, you can't open this. It's encrypted, and you're no longer authorized for it. That's a scenario where you want to see That actually makes really good sense. And so, from the business side, you want that to exist, but you certainly don't want to see that happening with your personal files or with your music or your pictures, or anything like that.
I use the Google Music service, and I found that pretty good actually. I just uploaded everything, and then I think for sort of £7 a month you get access to everything plus your own collection as well. And I think it works quite well, but of course Google don't support modern Windows apps, so you've got to use third-party apps, which work really well, but they're not the same as having the native app. So that's where it's a bit frustrating when you start using Google's services, that you get restricted to theirs. And like you said, they have an iOS app because they have to, but they don't support Windows because they don't want to.
Right, exactly, and that's the same. So you say, well, there's third-party apps that can do that, and that's the same thing that people say about Windows Phone. Well, you've got a third-party app for Instagram, or a third-party app for Snapchat, or whatever your whatever the service is. But yes, it's a third-party app, and it's not the same as a full-featured native app written by the people who run the service and who are going to maintain it, the same as they will on other platforms. And that's ultimately what it comes down to with all of these platforms is, none of them are perfect. Not a single one. So ultimately the calculation of which collection of devices, which menagerie of gadgets you're going to use throughout your day and evening is going to be determined by, first of all, your most important services and files. Are those available for the platform that you're considering? If the answer is yes, then great. You can go on with further consideration of that device or that platform. And if the answer is no, then you're probably going to say, well, maybe I'll look more carefully at some other platform instead. And then there's and then you get down to other stuff that it's sort of there, it works, doesn't work, and it's not essential for you, but the sheer number of apps available becomes a positive. You say, I'm always going to have entertainment here for that. But a lot of people just are ultimately going to start choosing teams. I'm an all Apple person. I'm an all Android/Google person, and I'm an all Microsoft devices and services person. A lot of that just comes down to a lot of the services that you consider most important are going to sort of steer you in one of those directions.
And it's interesting that Microsoft are the one that seem to offer the support for the most platforms. And so going back to what you mentioned, you're a Kindle user. Do you think we'll start to see Microsoft offer some of their services for Android open source project devices, sort of bypassing Google and going directly to the sort of device manufacturers and saying, here, have our services, and you don't have to then go, you're not then tied to Google?
Well, I think that's a logical extension of the whole Android open source project model. That's essentially what Amazon has done with its Kindle Fire tablets and its Fire phone. Those are both based on Android, but they're heavily modified, and they don't have the Google services attached to them. And instead they have Amazon services at their core. So if you're primarily an Amazon customer, with a big library of Kindle books and an Amazon Kindle store subscriptions to magazines and things like that, then you're going to find that very appealing. So Microsoft can very easily do the same kind of thing if it wanted to, taking the same, basic code base that they've got for the Nokia X and saying, okay, this is Microsoft Android, and now we have a suite of services and apps that are available that ship with it, that include Outlook.com and OneDrive and Skype. Those three for consumers would be just huge, and perhaps an Office trial version, or the Office app as it is for iOS, which allows you to view files, but if you want to edit it, you have to have a subscription. So you put all those things together, and you have a package that Microsoft could offer to especially phone manufacturers in emerging markets, where you say, here, this just runs on your phone. You build the hardware as cheaply as you can within this set of specs, and here's the software load that you put on it, and then go sell it, and it becomes an alternative to Google services.
Why would anybody want an alternative? Is it the relationship with Google or costs?
There's all sorts of business reasons for it. Differentiation is one of them. In order to get the Google Play certification, you have to go through there's a process that you have to go through, and then once you do that, you have to put a bunch of stuff onto it that is part of Google's requirements. If you want to be Google Play certified, then you must install certain Google services, and there's no option to pick and choose which ones you want on there. And so it's possible. So somebody's looking at that. Most of the small device manufacturers are not getting Google Play certified. I think I read somewhere that roughly 25% of Android devices being sold today are just from white box Android open source project makers in China and India and increasingly in places like Brazil, and they don't have the Google services in them. They're just a sort of a raw Android product with their own app store, whatever it is there. Now, so for them, it's unclear whether an outfit like that would be interested in signing up with Microsoft, unless Microsoft is actually paying them to bundle to install the Android build and Microsoft suite of services onto there, because there's an opportunity for selling an Office subscription there. There's opportunities for selling Skype minutes. So you could say that in the same way that that makers of desktop software pay Dell and HP for the right to be pre-installed on their PCs, Microsoft could very easily come into a white box manufacturer in China or India and say, here, we'll pay you $1 for every device that you ship that has this particular group of services on it, and has a pop-up that invites the device owner to sign up for extra Skype minutes. You could certainly see that. You could certainly see that happening. Now, for the other class of device maker, the ones that are large enough to be a potential legal target for companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple and all of that, a lot of those companies have signed patent licensing agreements with Microsoft so that they're paying a certain amount per device, even though Android is free nominally for them. They have a patent license agreement that requires them to pay some amount of money on a per device basis. And now I think I've read a lot of people. A lot of people think, well, that amount is between $5 and $15 per unit, and I think that those amounts are wildly exaggerated. I don't think those are accurate at all. But even if it's only, say, $2 per device, if Microsoft went into a company like that, sort of a second-tier manufacturer, but somebody who has a licensing agreement with Microsoft or wants a licensing agreement with them, telling them that they can have the Windows or the Microsoft services on the Android code base or on the Windows Phone code base or both, and it would be $0 instead of them having to pay $2 for the Android patent license agreements. Well, that might be enough right there, given, if you're selling a device for $60 and you can save $1 or $2 on it, I mean, that might be, you might be doubling your profit.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the point I was just going to make. You took it right out of my mouth. But
Yeah.
Also just going back to what you were saying about Google and Android and them forcing OEMs to do certain things. That sounds like a small software company for Redmond a few years back.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, there's nothing illegal about that, unless you are using a monopoly position to enforce those requirements on people. So that was where Microsoft got into trouble.
Yeah.
So people always say, I'll write about something like this, and the browser choice screen in the UK in the EU is a good example where people were saying, this is ridiculous. How come, Google can ship a Chromebook that only has the Chrome browser on it, but Microsoft, if there's a device that's shipped with Windows on it, it has to have the browser choice screen on it. Well, the reason is because Microsoft has been adjudged in both the EU and in the United States to have a monopoly on that operating system, and so they have to play by different rules once they're a monopoly. But because Chromebooks don't really sell, they certainly don't have a monopoly in any category. They can do anything they want with them. And Chrome, although it's popular, it doesn't have a monopoly. As a result, Google can do things with Chrome that it might not be able to do if it had the percentage of the browser market share that Microsoft had with Internet Explorer back in 1998 or 1999.
I also think it's a very different Microsoft these days. Back in the old days, Microsoft made money and survived based on DOS and Windows and Office, and there was famous quotes about Bill Gates and others saying you can't touch our cash cow. That's kind of why Windows Mobile existed and things like that. Whereas now Microsoft has got multiple billion-dollar businesses, like Office 365 has become one, Azure's become one. It no longer needs that revenue from Office and Windows to survive. So then you get to the point which is kind of really why your article resonated so well with me, because I was one of those people, wasn't I, Ian and Gary, saying this is a massive mistake for Nokia to bring out an Android-based phone, and it's gonna make developers nervous and they're gonna shy away. Why should I develop for a Windows phone if Microsoft's losing? It's starting to kind of wobble on that aspect. But reading your article, it really kind of opened my eyes, because and it kind of made me ask myself the question: is it the fact that my phone runs Windows, or is it the experience that I have on that phone that's important to me? And actually, does it really matter? And particularly to consumers, it doesn't matter at all if it's Windows underneath or Android, as long as the experience of Windows Phone kind of remains intact.
Right, and at that point, it's the quality of the apps that are powering those back-end services on each side. So you want a really great OneNote app on Android and iOS, so that if you happen to have one of those devices, you can feel, you just sign into your OneNote account and boom, there's all your notebooks, and you can review your notes from a meeting, you can add comments to something, you can save it, and you know that no matter where you go, it's going to be there. And what that requires is that you put the work into making a great app on each one of those platforms, not just a sort of placeholder there. And the other thing that a lot of people said, I think they had the same reaction that you were just describing here, So a lot of people said it's sending the wrong message for Microsoft to be shipping their Android Office app before they ship the Touch First Office for Windows, which it looks like it's going to happen. The rumors that Mary Jo Foley has reported, and I think she's probably right on the money with them, is that there will be an Android Office app later this year, and the full Touch First Office 16, I guess it will be, won't be until next spring. People say, well, this is betraying Windows developers, and clearly saying that Microsoft isn't committed to its platform, and no, it's not. What that's actually saying is two things. Number one, when you're an outside developer building on someone else's platform, as Microsoft is with iOS and Android, as Google is with iOS and potentially with Windows 8, then you can only play in the sandbox that the platform owner allows you to play in, and that therefore limits the functionality that you can offer, and it means that by definition the apps that you develop for iOS and Android are going to be interesting, but they're not. They cannot be as full featured as the Windows version that has been under more or less continuous development for 25 years now, because Microsoft owns that platform. Now, when Microsoft builds a touch-first application that runs on Windows 8.1 or Windows 9 or whatever it requires, it will be able to install its own system files as part of the Office installation. It will be able to tap into system resources and system libraries that are not available to the average third-party developer. So that means two things. It means that that app is going to be better, but it's also going to take longer to build, because you can't, if you were to put an Office app on Windows 8 that played in the sandbox, just as the Office apps do on iOS and Android, I think most Office users would be pretty dissatisfied with that solution, because they'd say, well, where's this feature? Where's that feature? Where's the ability to share stuff easily between to embed stuff from one application into another application? You say, well, you can't do that because the app platform doesn't allow you to do that. But if you say that we're going to allow Office special access to the system, just as they allowed Office to be compiled for Windows RT, unlike any other desktop app, then you've got so then you have both a reason why Office is coming later for Windows than it is for Android, and a potential reason for people to prefer that to the iOS and Android versions.
Yeah, because I think, was it the Windows 8.1 update where they allowed Metro, sorry, I still call them Metro, Metro applications to talk to kind of desktop APIs, and I think, I do wonder whether or not some of that was actually led by the development of the Office. Why reinvent the wheel when we can just access, the same underlying core features?
I think there's a certain amount of that, but I think there's also just a certain amount of that's the direction that all of these platforms are going to be going. That's what Apple is doing. With iOS 8, apps have a greater access to some system resources than they previously had. So that, for example, you can have an app can have its own custom keyboard, which was a big deal. It's something that you've had in Android for a while, I suspect. I think.
Yep.
But that's new to iOS, and it's new, but it's being added there because developers need it to do certain things. And so I think there's that same carefully opening up the platform to apps is happening on every platform. It has to be done slowly and deliberately, because if you do it haphazardly and carelessly, then you wind up with security nightmares, and you let the genie out of the bottle and you can never get it back in.
So looking at those sort of the Android and Microsoft Android devices, so the ultimate question then that leads to is there any point of Windows Phone, and is it something that Microsoft should just abandon and just go full ahead with an Android open source handset platform?
No, I think there's a lot of reason for the Windows Phone platform to continue. First of all, when you own the platform, your first-party devices and your first-party apps are always going to be guaranteed to work well there. You have control over them. Whereas if you're building on somebody else's code base, as you are with Android Open Source Project, Google runs that. Google could decide at some point next year. They say, well, the Android Open Source Project has been fun. We're handing it over to the community now, and we're renaming our version of Android. We're turning it into a private fork, and we'll continue contributing things to the Android Open Source Project, but they can sunset that at any time. If you get into that situation, then you're kind of trapped. You either have to start developing the operating system yourself instead of relying on this common code base that's being built by a community and that is made available for you to adapt later on. When you're reliant on someone else's work, you're always at a risk there. In addition to that, I think there's also going to be issues or advantages, especially for businesses, with the Windows Phone platform going forward. I think what you're probably going to see happen is a lot of features that where Microsoft is going to do kind of what Google is doing, which is to say, we're going to build for our platform first, for iOS second, and for Android as a distant third. Because that's when you get into business, it's Windows and iOS that are the two platforms that are being taken seriously now. The iPad is a serious player in business. I don't think that that Android has that same position within businesses, especially among IT pros. I think IT pros tend to see Android as a big hairball of security problems and maintenance issues, whereas Windows has universal apps and central management tools, and iOS has a very limited number of devices that need to be supported, and a very good manageability strategy that can be then hooked into System Center and other Microsoft management tools for IT professionals.
Sorry, Jay, go on.
I was just going to say, I also wonder, the next couple of years could be quite interesting, because I sometimes see that Samsung is quite a threat to Android. Break away from the Google-based Android and maybe come up with their own Android or similar platform, because the Samsung Galaxy devices do seem to have quite a big percentage of the Android market, and it would be quite easy for Samsung to go, we're fed up of doing things the Google way, we're going to go our own way, and that's that would create quite a cut across the market.
Well, they have Tizen, don't they?
Yes, but they also seem to be a little bit more friendly to Google recently.
Yeah, but that's all. I'm always wary about drawing any conclusions from the public actions of either Google or Samsung, both of which are cutthroat competitors. Neither one of them. I certainly wouldn't trust either one of them in a dark alley. And so I think though the weakness with Samsung's a great company, but Samsung's greatness derives from its control of a massive supply chain of components. And so the reason they're able to do so many products at so well is that they can, if it's not available, they can build it. If they need something for a specific device in a specific size and configuration, they can just go to a subsidiary and spin up the assembly line to do that sort of thing. They're not a software company, and in general, whenever you see a hardware company start mucking around in software, the results are usually disastrous. I mean, just look at what HP has done with software through the years. It's been.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, the stuff that they, a lot of the add-ons that they did for Windows Home Server, a lot of the stuff, the little shells they put on Windows, and the services that they add, and Acer has done the same thing. All of these hardware manufacturers try and do that, but it doesn't work. That's not their strength, and I would be really surprised to see Samsung, try and go its own way and create its own ecosystem. They could certainly create, if they haven't already, they probably do have their own app store.
They do, yeah.
So they can do, they can do things like that. They can mess with the experience in a way that probably drives Google nuts.
Yeah.
But the idea that they would completely go their own way. See, they're not Amazon. They don't have this. Amazon's core business is selling things, and so they when they put the operating system on a phone or a tablet, and the services that go around it, it's designed to make it easier for you to go spend money at Amazon.com, buying either physical goods to be shipped or digital goods to be delivered to your assortment of Amazon-enabled devices. Samsung, is by and large a hardware company.
That's a brilliant point. Actually, I hadn't really thought about it from that angle. And you could certainly include HP's WebOS in that. Unfortunately,
and they tried all sorts. I mean, they had dual boot. Do you remember? I think some of the laptops had dual boot into sort of Linux if you wanted to check your contacts or whatever, and then you could boot back into Windows. They tried all sorts of things, but like you said, nothing really stuck.
Well, and I forget, and somebody, I wish I could give credit to the person who made this observation the other day, because I read it, but I can't remember. They said that the problem with all of these companies, it might have been Benedict Evans, the problem with all of these hardware companies that have their own significant but still minority share of a larger platform market is that if they put their own stuff on the device, what they've done is to make their device different from the platform, and usually different is not good. Usually different is bad, and the first thing that a new buyer is going to do is try and get rid of the different stuff and replace it with the familiar stuff that they like.
Yeah, I mean that's one reason why I don't like Samsung Android devices was for all the extra bits and pieces they put on. I prefer the Play editions of devices because it's just a cleaner experience.
And that is the one thing that Windows Phone is really great at. You can have a device from any manufacturer, and the experience is exactly the same. There's no lag in the operating system, and it works the same way. So that was definitely something that Microsoft did really well.
And that's probably one reason why some of the device manufacturers chafe at at participating in that ecosystem, because the numbers are small and they can't differentiate. The rules were so well defined and restrictive that basically everybody's phone wound up being pretty much the same as everybody else's phone. And Nokia, frankly, has been able to compete primarily on two fronts. One is their camera technology, and the other is their mapping and services technology. And the Nokia maps, anybody who's used Nokia's maps just sort of laughs at the people who are talking about whether Google Maps or Apple Maps are better. I think Nokia's mapping technology is probably superior to either one of them in a lot of respects.
I think the only gripe I really have with the Nokia is their here drive, the turn-by-turn navigation can be quite off. It sent me and my wife on separate occasions down really narrow country roads when a competing turn-by-turn solution like Copilot actually knew a main road which was quicker and far easier to navigate. But just quickly say, a colleague of mine at work, he's gone from a Samsung Galaxy to a Nokia Lumia 920, and he said that one of the things that he enjoyed the most was being able to turn the phone on and uninstall all the carrier stuff. He said that was one of his gripes with the Samsung device, that it had all this carrier branding and apps and stuff, and he just couldn't get rid of them.
Yeah, we take our small victories where we can.
Absolutely.
We're sort of running slightly over, but I always enjoy listening to you talk, Ed. So I don't want to shut down too much. But so where do you see this going then? Sort of looking out in the short and medium term, are we going to see Microsoft continue with Windows Phone, merging with Windows Phone with Windows RT, or pursue more of the open source project?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I think we'll get some clues. Unfortunately, in the next few days or weeks, hopefully it's days, when Microsoft announces their reductions in force or layoffs, they're going to have some of those. They went from a company with roughly 100,000 employees to one with, I think, 130,000 employees when they absorbed Nokia. And so there's, and the widespread, and I think accurate rumors are that there's going to be some layoffs coming, probably more than 5,000 people in total. And so if we look at where those layoffs are coming from, that will give us some clues. But I think right now there's the sensible strategy is to place bets all over the table. That to not have big bets, but to have many, many small bets. There was something that Satya Nadella said back it was an interview in February, shortly after he had taken over the CEO position, and I'm not sure. It was something along the lines of he says that you can look at a product and it's a failure until it's not, or words to that effect. And what he was saying is, he says, I could have two $1 billion businesses here and one $1 million business here, and that $1 million business might be the key to my future. But if I just look at it, if I evaluate it on its current return and its current sales and everything, I'll just say this is a hopeless failure. Why are we beating our head against the wall? And then something will happen in the marketplace that will click, and then it starts to take off. I think we may have seen that, for example, with Azure, and with all of the Office 365 products. A lot of people don't realize the Office 365 products are maybe only 2 years old, but they've actually been around since 2007. So they're approaching like 7 years old, with Exchange Online and SharePoint Online and all those things, and they have been just relentlessly developing and building out those products. So even when something looked like it was a 1.0 release, it was massive investment being put into it that was building on years worth of work underneath it, and you're seeing that pay off with the user bases for Office 365, like doubling or tripling every year, and at $100 a year per subscriber, or $150 or $200 for business subscribers, that's potentially many billions of dollars worth of business. So you look at some of these other products, you look at some of these other initiatives, and you say, well, there's one point of view that just says, well, we should just concentrate on this and this, really put our effort into this. There's a different point of view that I think is sort of in vogue in Redmond right now, which is let's spread these bets across the board and work on as many platforms as possible and try to and see which ones succeed. And take it from there.
Yeah, which makes sense.
I, for one, if Windows RT and Windows Phone do end up getting merged, I'll take that as a victory. That's what I said this never long. I'll take that victory.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think Microsoft got a lot of pieces in place now, and starting to see like the cross-platform approach, and even though many people criticise the modern UIs and devices like the Surface, I see my kids using them where I know they would have been using a desktop or a laptop in the past, and they would have been using Android or iPad. So you can see the direction that things are going, and there's a lot of positives to take from it, as well as a lot of opportunities being out there.
Yep, and I don't think the opportunities for monopolies or this huge, overwhelming market share are there to the extent that they used to be. I think we're getting into a world where there are going to be lots of choices available to you. That's the thing. People may want to, different companies may want to try to dominate one of those segments. They may want to try and focus on one of those segments. But in terms of choice, I think we're going to continue to have more choices, not fewer, for a long, long time to come.
Yeah, which is great for us.
Yep.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, as ever, I love getting you on the show and love hearing your thoughts, and really enjoyed you being back on the show.
It's been my pleasure, Ian, and Jason and Gary. Thanks for you as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah,
I've just sat back here and listened. It's great.
That's always the best thing. You can get to. This is why I like getting you on it, and we can get to listen to you talking. So, where's the best place then to keep up with you so we can follow you?
Oh gosh, I think if you just go to my ZDNet page, zdnet.com/blog/bot, that'll do it. Or just Google @bot ZDNet.
Oh, well, I'll ping it. Yep. And there's a $1 billion business already.
Yep.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, I'll make sure I include links in the show notes anyway. So, Ed, it was great to have you on the show. Really enjoyed it, and we won't leave it again too long to get you back on again.
Thanks again. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Ed. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.